Welcome to The Real Recipe, the podcast that brings you the perfect blend of real estate trends and topics, where we serve up fresh insights and sizzling strategies. So let's get cooking.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to The Real Recipe. We have a special guest with us today. Attorney Keifer Garcia from Garcia Law is joining us. We are going to talk about a very exciting topic, and that is divorce in real estate.
Yes.
Always top of mind for everybody in the business, unfortunately, because it is a tough situation to have to deal with, but very necessary. And certainly being on our side of it, we see a lot of how it affects the transaction. And we recently had a presentation that Keifer did that I thought was very interesting, gave some really good pointers, not just to real estate professionals, but of course to everyone, you know, if they're dealing with this type of situation. So I wanted to have him come on and chat a little bit about that. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background first.
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Keifer Garcia. I am the founder and owner of Garcia Law in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. I am an attorney for about, I'm feeling old, so it's going to be 10 years next year. 10 years.
10 years, that's nothing.
10 years next year. So we practice in immigration law, real estate law, family law. We do some landlord and tenant law as well.
Yep.
But definitely happy to be here because this is a great topic to discuss.
Awesome. So getting, I guess, right into it, like I said, I kind of looked at the presentation that you had the other day and was pulling some topics out of that, but what are, I guess, some of the biggest challenges that you see getting into the transaction, you know, whether it's from clients or, you know, with realtors or those who are involved, like what are the biggest hurdles that you say?
I think communication. One of the videos that we just posted from our firm, I gave the number one divorce tip. And I tell people right out in the video, the fact that parties can't sit like we are right now and just talk. I think communication is key. If we have communication, I would make less money, right? And things would get done differently, not in a conflicted environment. I think that we would do it in an amicable environment that sometimes is beneficial for all parties involved. Right. So I would have to say communication.
How many of the, like how much of it, like, you know, you have like 10 clients come through, are like 8 of them so you know, hell bent on trying to get over on the other that it's just a very, you know, how many situations are actually amicable, or most of them predominantly, you know, hard fought battles about who's getting what? And
I would say 30% are amicable.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. 30%.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And now when are you usually intercepting, like I'm sure you're working with the clients first. Now are they, you brought up something last time we spoke, they get into, you know, someone files for divorce, and then I guess it gets to the point where they either have to sell the house, you know, or they've already gotten divorced and then someone's selling the house after the fact. So really, where do you kind of come into the transaction when it intersects with real estate?
I think when people hear that we do divorce law or family law and real estate law, I think it's a peculiar niche that we have that we practice in, because I'm already starting to analyze, okay, as soon as we get the consult or the intake sheet, we sit with the client, and I'm already analyzing, okay, where's the money? Where's the money going to come from to buy him or her out? School districts, if they have children.
Right, sure.
You know, all these things. So I think from our perspective, we're already analyzing it and saying, well, if wife, for example, wants to move to West Orange in New Jersey, but she's in Clifton right now because it's a better school district, where are we going to get that money for her to resettle with the kids, right? Relocate. So we're evaluating that as we go. And I think at that point, even from the intake perspective, we're already thinking about what does the client want? What does she or he need? And how do we get them there?
Okay.
And most of the time nowadays, the money is in the marital assets, which most of the time is the home.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And with this market, it's a seller's market.
Easily the home, yeah.
If like going through that process, what was my question? I was going to say, kind of going into that process, I think I had asked this in the past because we always get this question, is I'm getting divorced, for example. 2 of us have to sell the house but then buy our own houses, or one of us has to buy a house and the other one, you know, is renting or something like that. Really, how can those funds be used now? You know, where do the funds come from? Can I purchase something while I'm in the process of getting divorced? Is that now considered a marital asset because I'm not officially divorced yet? How does that timeline work?
The number one thing that I tell people after we go through the full consult, I say, look, if you're going to file for divorce, if you're going to file, for example, tomorrow in the state of New Jersey, and you want to go buy a BMW, a Benz, a house, right, a condo, if you file today and it's actually filed with the court, then you can go buy another asset, because at that point, your spouse cannot touch that asset, or what we call make a claim to it, right? So that's number one. And then number two, regarding evaluating that and saying, okay, after I did that, am I still safe, right? No, not necessarily. I had a client just recently who said, look, I want to buy another property to be close to my children and my ex-wife for the same school district. So I asked him, where are the funds coming from? He said, from another country as a gift. Did those funds ever touch a marital joint bank account or any type of account? No. Can you prove it? Yes. Okay. Then we can go ahead. As long as it's not commingled with
Okay.
marital funds, then we're okay.
And now that you have, I think, of an interesting role in it too, because when someone's buying a house and they're in the
Yeah,
process of
getting a
getting
mortgage
divorced,
makes it really tough, because even though they may have filed, for me, that is irrelevant. At least in terms of getting the financing, I need a divorce.
decree.
Yeah, I need a divorce decree. I need it finalized before I'll use that as a way to ignore a marital asset or ignore a mortgage or give them credit for income or alimony. You know, usually if they're getting alimony, you usually require, several months of it being received in order to use that money for qualification purposes. So it creates a very odd dynamic where, you could be in a situation where you're in this kind of gray area until things finalize before you can start either using alimony or ignoring mortgage payments, things like that.
Right.
Which inevitably causes problems from qualification standpoint, right? Not being able to get the loan that you want or get the house that you want. So
And you can use child support as income
Yeah.
for that as well.
Yeah, child support and alimony can be used, but again, you got to prove that you're getting it. You got to prove that you've gotten it for a certain period of time. You need a divorce decree finalized in order for that to be evident as well. So it creates some challenges for sure, and that's
Yeah.
why. So getting the divorce and splitting up the marital asset is, from a financing side, is challenging.
I just think that touching upon that, right, including, let's say, a lender like Ryan into the picture, the team is so crucial.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
from the get-go, we say, if you have a marital asset, if it's a home, start reaching out to a lender. If you don't have a lender, we can recommend someone, right? And we're not even adding another ingredient to the mix. If there's an immigration consequence because that spouse petitioned for their other spouse, it's even an added layer, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
sure.
the team that you work with is so crucial.
Right.
And the communication within that team is so crucial.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people involved in it, because I feel like sometimes, you have two people getting divorced. They each have their own divorce attorney and some, the same realtor. But then sometimes I've seen people have their own individual real estate attorneys in addition to that. So now you're like 5 people deep.
Well, it's good. You brought up a good point. You're like, we're kind of in a niche where we do a lot of it, right? Which, listen, I'm sure you have. I can see you're already grinning because you get these attorneys involved and everybody starts muddying the water, and then all of a sudden you get in this transaction and it is literally going sideways because you've got everybody wanting to defend their position, and it just makes it a very tense situation. I gotta believe, right?
Right.
I mean, I can't even imagine having 4 attorneys involved in trying to settle one divorce
sale.
or one
Yeah.
sale. Yeah.
A divorce and a sale at the same time, really.
And I think that's why the communication and team is so crucial, because if you're part of my team, you already know where we're going with this.
Yeah,
You already
yeah.
know how we communicate. We talk about it every day or every other day.
Yeah.
So if you can control as much as possible from your side for the
Yeah.
best interest of the client, that's
Yeah.
perfect, right? Why not?
So I guess the question is, if you're going to get divorced, or you're moving in that direction, you need to really take stock of what you have, what you own, from a marital perspective. You brought up an interesting topic about did the funds actually touch your account? Because once it's in your account joint, that's it. It's a marital asset, right? There is no yes and no.
And I'll be an attorney now and say it depends, right?
Okay, sure.
Because there's always a case-by-case evaluation, but when we evaluate divorces and marital assets and alimony, and there's all these factors, we have to really take it case by case, because everybody, one of the things we got to ask is, well, isn't it black and white? Isn't it straightforward? and I say this all the time, a judge in Bergen County is not going to rule the same way in the same case
Sure.
in Essex County. And that's what's frustrating, because clients want expectations, set them early, right?
Yeah.
But it's a fluid
Well,
matter.
New Jersey's what, a dowry state, right? Which means you technically have rights to certain assets just by virtue of being married, correct?
Correct. So it's a no-fault state, meaning you don't, if you're commit adultery or things of that nature, doesn't matter. But as far as community property and how it gets split up, equitable distribution does
Yeah.
apply, and then you have to prove, it's your burden to prove if it's not a marital asset, right, and why.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
I think some of the biggest, we see more of the problems post-divorce on our end. And as an attorney, real estate attorney, I'm sure you've seen this too, and I don't know how many people have come back to you after the fact if you worked on a divorce case for them, but we see it a lot where someone stays in the home and the attorney that worked on their divorce, like they never filed a new deed to remove the current spouse or ex-spouse from title. So 5-10 years later, whatever, that person goes to refinance or sell the home and title's pulled and their ex is still on the deed, and technically they still have to sign off on the sale of the property. So we either have to go back to, the divorce settlement, and sometimes they'll be able to, work something out, or we've seen instances where, we had this gentleman had been divorced for 15 years, 13 or 15 years, I forget what it was, but his ex-wife had moved on. She lived in a totally different state. And he was selling the house in Bergen County.
Got to track him down. Get him
Right.
sign
And
off.
then when they finally did, she was like, that's fine, I'll sign, but I want 50% of the sale of the home. And they ended up settling on 30%.
Really?
So, yes. And when they got divorced, it was agreed that he was going to continue to live in the house, but there was no, I guess, details discussed that, there was no new deed filed or anything like that. And I just don't think it was anything that he ever thought would be a problem after the fact. We see it a lot with refinances. And usually I'm the one who has to go and get the deed signed by the ex-spouse when they begrudgingly agree. And then I got to sit there for 5 minutes while they complain about their spouse. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I have to do this
20
now.
years ago. Oh my gosh. this is
Exactly.
crazy.
I mean, and I get it. It is, of course, an inconvenience. It's like
Yeah.
this thing is getting dredged up. But from a realtor's perspective, I think that it's important that the realtor's always doing their due diligence on finding out who's on the current deed when they get the listing agreement signed. Because when they go to take a listing, asking who's the current owner of the home, checking property records, tax records aren't always 100% accurate, pulling a copy of that current owner deed. And if someone says, I'm divorced, and you see that there's that person and the, another name on the deed still that they used to be married to, husband and wife, then it's a red flag, and you want to let them know ahead of time at the inception of taking the listing.
Yeah.
Your ex-spouse is going to have to likely sign off on this.
Correct.
So they can start the process of, that horrible process of reaching out to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't talk anymore. So it's not always 30%,
Sure, it's not-
like
it's
you
not-
said.
it's
It's
not
not always
always
that 30%
amicable, yeah.
amicable. So we see a lot of those issues, and that definitely delays closing, but it does happen. So,
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
alright, well,
It's an interesting. It's a very complicated divorce. Divorce in real estate is always a complicated situation. Even regardless of even when it's amicable, I would assume, because trying to figure out, should we sell? Should we not sell? Am I going to stay here? Am I not going to stay here? Who's going to pay for all this stuff? Who's going to pay for the mortgage? Splitting that asset up and making that work is a very challenging situation, right? I mean,
It's challenging. Number one, if it was black and white, it's just numbers, right? Even numbers sometimes become difficult, but emotions, and when there's children involved, and there's just so many moving parts that at the end of the day, I was talking to somebody in the elevator coming up here. Half the time you're a therapist, half the time
Sure.
you're an
Right.
attorney, and you have to have empathy. You have to lend a time to the file, and you have to understand it globally, because if you don't, you can make a mistake.
oh yeah,
That has consequences for years.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. What happens, like, so I see it from a different perspective, because I'm usually post divorce, or I'm coming into it at the in the later stages of the process, right? what inevitably happens when somebody, like let's say a husband and wife get divorced and the wife's going to stay in the house and she's going to get alimony. The husband is still obligated on that mortgage, right? And maybe she's going to stay in the house for a certain period of time, but then he wants to go and buy a house. The challenge there is twofold. One, you want to get the wife to, maybe you put a clause in the divorce where the wife has to refinance and
Right.
and take him off the mortgage. But what if she can't refinance?
And if I represent the husband, for example, in that case, I'll have a discussion with him. You know her finances, or we've done it through the discovery, right?
Right.
I know she can't refinance unless she wins the lottery, for example.
Right.
So I tell him, are we really banking on her getting a refinance? No. So, but if we can settle, then what we do is say, okay, 60, 90 days after the divorce, you have to refinance. If you cannot prove that you started the process, then the home will be listed for sale immediately.
Okay.
Right.
Because like you said, my client, if I'm representing the husband, my credit, right?
Sure.
If she doesn't pay the mortgage.
Oh,
or
yeah.
If there's an agreement, if she's not paying, my credit's shot. And I want to qualify for a new home.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck for a bit. But if my attorney did the right thing, he or she set me up for success. Not
Right.
failure.
There's some fail safes along
Correct.
the way to prevent,
Correct.
Just that quagmire of what do we do?
Right.
You can't refinance. Well, it's
Right.
still in my name. I want to go buy, or I want to go do something else, and I can't. And then you're stuck in the situation
Well,
of,
and-
let me talk to my
yeah.
ex-wife who I don't want to talk to about trying to figure this out, right?
And I think people get in the habit of not getting that proper legal counsel. Well, they're showing them the future picture
Yeah.
of what it looks like for them to buy a house or even be able to refinance or sell the home in the future. But all those things need to be looked at. And again, a common situation is after the fact, people reach out to us and like, oh, who can I reach out to have my ex-husband or ex-wife removed from the deed? And you do a current owner search and you see that they're also still listed on the mortgage too. A lot of people and a lot of attorneys out there will go ahead and just file a deed for someone,
Right,
and
and
it
not- and not
removes
do
them
the-
from
do-
the deed, and then they go to sell the house, and it's like, well, great, like or you refinance, and it's like, well, you're still on the mortgage, and that doesn't remove that person's obligation from having
Right.
to be on the mortgage. So you almost spent hundreds of dollars for absolutely nothing. But that really does
love it.
happen, or people will remove themselves from the deed because for some reason they don't want to look like they have any interest in the home, and it's like it's still a marital asset. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you're on the deed or not, But again, some attorneys and aren't properly counseling their clients, and these are not the routes you have to take, or looking into the future as to what happens if you want to sell.
Well,
the
what about
house
the
or
opposite?
refinance.
What about the opposite, where husband and wife get divorced, wife is staying in the house, wife gets remarried?
Okay.
Doesn't that house technically become a marital asset of the new marriage? Because he's living in there, she's living in there. It's technically a marital asset. She still has ownership of it.
It wouldn't be a marital asset because they didn't acquire it during their marriage,
Right.
the previous marriage, right?
Okay.
But we'll go into cohabitation if there's alimony. And that's
Right,
A whole different.
right. I could just see where this just becomes a tangled web of
Yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah.
And the meter for you is just going.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of people complain about legal fees, right? We get told all the time. We charge hourly, but if you do things correctly with the right team behind you, you'll only have to do this once, not do do-overs.
Right.
That
Yeah.
cost legal fees.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I can appreciate that. Necessary evil.
So what are some I know you gave us kind of some pointers on especially for the real estate professionals on how to get through this. We know communication is a big thing. I'm sure putting everything in writing, especially, that as an attorney, but I'm sure talking to people on your team from a realtor's perspective, it's hard to, I think, maybe treat everybody in the transaction with the same communication, but you really have to. Like maybe someone's listing the house and they know the wife personally, the realtor knows the wife personally or the husband personally, to treat the two of them with the same level of communication, the same timing, even though that's hard to do if you know one person maybe more so than the other, because you don't want to give someone a reason to come back and say, well, I didn't make this decision. My wife made it or my husband made it with the realtor and I wasn't privy to this. So I'm sure putting everything in writing has, a very big impact in these type of situations.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you want to do that in any situation.
That's true.
But you'd be surprised, and I'm sure you'll probably attest to this. You'll be surprised at how many people don't do that, or don't take the time to at least have the dialogue about, hey, what are we doing here?
I think the number one thing that most of the realtors I work closely with, I always look out for them, and they look out for me.
Yeah.
One of the things I always tell them, remember, put it in writing. If you just had this conversation, put it in writing. But to go with Jackie's point also about, putting in writing, communication, I can't do everything. You can't do everything. You can't do everything, Jackie, and if it's a divorce process in real estate. So if I have that team, I know everyone's doing the same thing, right? One of the things that we do is the holistic approach. Once I have a divorce, if I know that they can use a lender, use a title company, I bring them in. We call it a roundtable. Free of charge with the team that we work with, and they come down and sit, and the lender asks a few questions, financial advisor asks a few questions, and we already start making a plan for this client. And what better way for him or her to get to know this team than a roundtable?
Sure, sure.
So I think it's key, because if we're on the same page, it'll head in the right direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. Well, before we wrap up, we always like to ask any good war stories without saying too much, or any funny stories to share.
Sure, listen, it's
with the
divorce
group.
and real estate.
There's
I'm
such
sure
a
there's
backlog that you can't even pick one.
Right.
But
Yeah, I'm going through one right now. Our office is going through one right now. To give you the bullet points, 2021, we file for divorce. I represent husband. He tries to reconcile. We dismiss a divorce, withdraw it, basically. Then he calls me a few weeks later saying things are okay. I said, you know what, I don't think they're going to be okay, because certain things happen that things are not going to be okay. Lo and behold, I think it was 5 months later, he calls me. There's a restraining order against him, January 2023. I told him, I kind of told you so. He says, well, yeah. And we have a restraining order. We get that one dismissed. Now we file for divorce again, because he says, I learned my lesson.
yeah.
We list the marital home for sale. The wife agrees to, signs a consent order. The judge signs it.
Yeah.
And then we're about to close. I'm not the real estate attorney. I'm just the divorce attorney for the husband. And the closing's October 27th. The wife decides, well,
I don't want
I
to
was
sell.
coerced. Someone threatened me, forced me. So it gets worse, because the CO inspection happened a few weeks ago, and the inspector comes in, all the realtors are there, and then she takes the buyer to the side and says, I'm going to show you everything that's wrong with this house.
No.
And takes the inspector and says, I'm going to show you everything that's wrong with the house, too. Then she starts communicating with the buyer and their realtor, saying that this is a crap house, which is not, and I'm not signing, and no one's going to take me out of this house. So we're dealing with that in the family court.
Oh, God.
And the real estate attorney and I are communicating. The realtors are communicating. She filed complaints against the realtors and all that. And the bottom line is that it's so complicated.
Yeah.
But everybody has to be on the same page, and communication goes a long way.
Yeah.
But it can happen. It sounds like a law school hypothetical, but
Yeah.
but it does happen, and we're living through it, right? But it's just a matter of advising the client correctly, communication with the client, and knowing if there's an end goal. Make a clear end goal with these type of cases, so everybody knows what to expect and what not to expect.
yeah, that's gonna be tough for
But
that
it's a true
buyer.
story. True
That's
story.
gonna be tough for that buyer. I mean, I guess you don't think about that maybe going into it as a buyer, but there's a potential that you might have to hang around for a little bit and see something like that through if it's a little messy on the seller's
Yeah, I
side.
guess.
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
or she walks as she's leaving. There's holes in walls. There is.
if I were that buyer, I would have been
There
like,
is.
you know what? Trust me, you don't want to live here anymore. There's so
Yeah.
many things attached to this house. You got to just move on with your life. Like,
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, listen, you hit the nail on the head. It's emotional. It's an emotional reaction to an emotional situation, right? There's no logic involved in that at all.
If we look at it, who's losing money? They got over asking,
right.
closing within 40 days, right? Who's
Right.
losing money? She needs money to move out. He needs money. They're in debt.
Yeah.
Where's the money coming from? The only asset they have is
The house, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
who's getting hurt? The kids?
Yeah,
And both of
they're
them.
always getting
Yeah.
hurt, obviously, right? But
So, when there's emotions involved, sometimes, reason, there's no room for reasons.
so real quick before we wrap up, so I gotta believe that when you're sitting down with people, you're going, okay, I know exactly how this is gonna go, and you're probably at a point now where you're just like, oh, yeah, this is either this is gonna be easy or this is gonna be a train wreck, because I mean you've done it so many times now. You just kind of know, like, to your point about the husband. Yeah, I know where this is gonna go. I've seen this play out thousands of times. You know, and I gotta believe for you that's a little bit challenging, or one of the more challenging aspects of it, because you want to kind of pull him or her aside and go, hey, listen, this is how this is gonna go. I've seen this play out like this. This is what you need to do. But then there's also I guess you got to let them see some of it too, or experience some of it, right? Like you're smiling because it's almost weird, like because I run into it too when you're trying to counsel people and you're trying to tell them like, hey, this is how this is going to go, and they're like, I don't know if that's what I want to do, and you almost got to let them. It's got to let it simmer for a minute. No, like I mean,
it sometimes is difficult because you say the only one who's going to benefit from it. I'll be honest, is me. Our office, because we get more legal fees.
Right.
Right? Because it got delayed 3 or 4 weeks when I told you we could have done it the first week. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm honest with them. I tell them, look, I'll be transparent from day one. You're going to pay me more to get to the same spot, and it's going to cost you $5,000 or $6,000 more in legal fees.
Right.
When it could have gone for your next property, for your kid's school, whatever it was, right? So,
right.
I look at clients sometimes and I tell them, look, based on my experience, it's going to most likely play out X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
No, it's not. and like you said, sometimes they have to live it a little bit to say, whoa. You know, Kafer was right. Let's back
this
that
is exactly what's going on. Yeah,
you know. So, like I tell people, lawyers are infamous for, you know, they say we want to rack up the legal fees more and more and more, but I want a happy client. Because they'll come back and refer a client or refer.
They'll come back for their second divorce.
Well, if this happens again, here we go. I know what to do now.
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
but it's definitely your job. Like you said, part-time you're a therapist, part-time you're an attorney. There's no emotion for you for the most part. I mean, obviously a little bit, but not in the same way as a client. There's not that emotion tied to it. And when emotion's high, reasoning is always low. So you're there to look at it from an outside perspective and say, listen, this is probably how it's going to play out. Or you're hiring me for a reason, and I'm telling you we have to do it this way because of X, Y, and Z. And I know it's hard to see that right now, but I'm telling you that because, like you said, we want to get to the end goal, and we want to get there with as little disruption, you know, and as less heartache as possible.
Not fun. It's not easy. It's not, you know, it's a complex transaction, right? It's not something you just walk in and go, let's get divorced and it'll be done in 5 minutes. I mean, I guess you could, but
it could. It's rare.
Yeah,
you know?
Right. It's very rare. Hey, we're both good. We figured it all out. Here we go. We just need to put the pen to paper and figure and make this go away. And then
the biggest docket in the state of New Jersey is the
divorce.
family division docket.
Is family, yeah.
That's
all you need to know right there, right? That's and it's, you know, for a lot of different reasons, but there you go.
Exactly. I tell realtors all the time, there's a niche here because out of every divorce, there's potentially 2 or 3 transactions from every divorce.
Yeah.
Right. So for any realtors out there, it's a great niche to focus on.
Even on the lending side. Some of the most successful loan officers I know specialize in divorce. Yep. And they love it. They're like, this is great. And they got it down. To your point, they got a team. They got it down. They know what they're doing. You know, and they love it. I don't know. For me, it's a little frustrating because it's you know,
you gotta have patience.
Yeah, it's yes.
I can tell you have a lot of it. So
yes, right. Like I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
You know, I've done quite a few of them, but you know, it's very because you've got so many different people, you know, in the transaction. Like you know, trying to reach out and get
a lot of hands in the pot.
Yeah, a lot of hands in the pot. So, but is there any summary here? Any words of wisdom? If you're thinking
two things really. Yeah, the team you work with is crucial.
For
people
sure.
like you, people like Jackie, right? People like
for sure.
You. And communication, in everything we do.
The bedrock of every solid transaction, right?
Relationship.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean we talk about it, you know, pretty extensively. That you know who you work with matters, right? And it really is evident. It's evident in every industry and every business in this world. And you know, if you have good people around you that support you, that know what you're doing and know the direction you're trying to go, can help you get there easier and faster, and it just makes the transaction smoother. Even though and divorce is a tough topic, it's a tough conversation to have. But you know, you're right, if you have the right people around you, it can take a very complex and very difficult situation and make it, you know, as smooth as it can be. I mean, it's never a smooth transaction, but make it easier on all parties so that you're not
Right.
Having a battle royale in a conference room, about who's getting the steak knives and the fine china, So
Yeah.
Or splitting the French bulldog. That's another one. Oh, that's
Yeah.
for another time.
Yeah.
You get the ass, I get the head.
All right, we're wrapping
So
it up
we'll
on
leave it
that.
on. We'll end it on that.
All right.
right.
Thank you again, Kiefer.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Till
Thank
next
you.
time.
Yes.